Okay, so your song itself is good. The subject matter is good. I understand the message that you're trying to get across. I get that. But here's the thing. The problem with this is that I can clearly tell that this is a rough draft because when I'm listening to the vocals all the way through, I can hear that extra air, that background air from when you were editing or whoever was editing, whoever your engineer is. I can hear where they actually chop the pieces off and then you hear that air cut off. You can actually hear it when the vocal, like when there's space in between you saying something on the track, you can hear that air cut off. So that tells me right then and there that you recorded this in a room or something that had too much space in it to where there was a lot of background air and you didn't use any plugins to drown that out. And what you should have done, whoever your engineer is, this is what they should have done. If you're gonna cut if you're gonna cut the front end and the back end of the audio off like that to kind of delete that dead air, what you needed to do is you need to put a fader on the front and then put a fader on the end and try to get it as close to the very beginning of the vocal and the very end of the vocal as possible. Cut that all the way and then put a tiny fader on the front and the back. A little bit of engineering, techniques for y'all. Because I use Pro Tools. I'm on Pro Tools. But you know what I'm talking about for the engineers out there. So that's what you should have done. And if you don't know how to do that, if you're savvy with plugins, then you could have used a plugin called the NS1 noise suppressor. Put it on about 40. Anything above 40, your audio is gonna sound muffled. 40, it'll do you a great amount of justice, and it takes out that background air to where you'll have some good solid vocals. There's a lot of work that needed to be done on those vocals, man. I can clearly tell when I was listening to it that it was a rough draft. The beat sounded like it was put together well, but the problem is that the vocals were not engineered correctly to where it sounds like it's part of the beat or that it kind of, flows steady with the beat. Because the way you want to do it, this is how it's supposed to be. So when you're engineering, you have to engineer the vocals in a way to where the vocals will sit right here and the beat kind of makes a shape around it to where the vocals are front and center and then you have all the instrumentation around it. Like if you go to a concert and you see that the performer is front and center and then they have a live band or something, the band is always around or somewhere in the back of the performer. So the way it's set up, when you're sitting there watching, you have the vocals coming at you front and center, and then you have the instruments spreading out like this, to where you have the vocals in the center and all the instrumentation is surrounding it to provide you that 3D listening experience. So that's how you have to engineer the vocals within the song and within the beat as well. See, when I engineer music, I create my beats in a way to where you can get that full listening experience. So then when I take that over to Pro Tools and I lay down some vocals or whatever, I'm doing all of my chops and my edits, throw on that NS1 noise suppressor, and then I throw on the vocal rider too to make sure that everything is balanced out, along with me tweaking the levels manually. But I want to make sure that everything can be heard evenly. I make sure I adjust my ad-libs properly, my background vocals properly, and I make sure that my verses and everything sound on point, and I put faders on the fronts and the ends, and I make sure I get rid of that dead air so that way I have good quality vocals on the first session. So then once I do that, everything is blended together. Then I create a mastering session where I do all my plugins and I do all my final touch-ups, where I throw my reverb on there, I throw my like 3 or 4 compressors on there, CLA 76, BF, I want to say it's BF 76. I throw on a DL3, and then I use something else too. I just can't think of it off the top of my head, but I throw on the air reverb. Sometimes I'll use Greg Wells Voice Centric, but a lot of times I'll use the S1 stereo imager, and then I always make sure that I use the air kill, the advanced instrument research air kill. Like there's a lot of things that I do to make sure that my vocals come out nice and clean from an engineering standpoint, from the recording all the way to me applying my plugins and making sure that everything comes out the way it's supposed to where I can adjust everything with the threshold on the compressor, on all my compression. I make sure that my input is lower. I always make sure that my input is lower than my output. I always make sure that my attack is all the way up, and then I kind of fluctuate with the release, because I don't put the release and the attack the same. I mean, I know it sounds technical for all the people that don't understand the ins and outs of how music works and how to put it together. But for the engineers, you guys know what I'm talking about. It makes a lot of sense. But anyway, when it comes to you recording your vocals, bro, you're not doing a bad job. You got it. The thing is, whoever you're working with on this engineering, they need to get with you and really sit you down and walk you through how this works, so that way you're not just recording it one time and saying, all right, let's go ahead and bounce it and then let's send it out. Because you can clearly tell this is a rough draft. Now, I know you might be kind of new to it, because I can tell that you're kind of new to the recording and putting music out. And, you know, it's good that you're getting your feet wet with it. But, however, if you want more plays, and if you want more exposure, and if you want people to take your music seriously, you have to put more time and effort into actually crafting the music and creating works of art. And now I'm going to leave it there. So with that being said, that's pretty much my reaction, man.